Yo, what's going on, guys? CultofMush back at it with another video, and in this video I want to talk about buying used PC hardware. A lot of you guys have actually asked me to cover this topic, whether or not you should look into buying used hardware. And it's a topic that I haven't really covered in my video since I usually stray towards talking about, retail products, hardware that you can buy brand new on Amazon, Newegg, and stuff like that. However, since so many of you have asked me to do a video on this, let's talk about it. Let's talk about whether or not you should buy used hardware for your PC. Now, right off the bat, if you have a decent budget to build your gaming PC around $800 to $1,000, I wouldn't even look into buying used hardware. Buying used hardware should be for those that really want to save a lot of money, and if you have a $800 to a $1,000 budget, you're going to be able to build a really great gaming PC just with that money while buying all new hardware. So if you have an $800 to $1,000 budget, I would just avoid used products entirely. Obviously, if your budget is anything over $1,000, then also avoid used products in my opinion. When buying used hardware really comes into play is when your budget is under $600 or at that $600 mark. Because at that budget, when you're trying to build a budget gaming PC like that, you are starting to limit the hardware that you have in that PC based on your budget. And if you do go the route of buying used hardware, you can expand what your PC can do and save a little bit of money. Now, I would never recommend to buy every piece of hardware for your PC used. There's some things that I just would not buy used. I wouldn't buy a used hard drive, I wouldn't buy a used power supply. Things like that, I would just buy new. Hard drives new are pretty cheap, and power supplies, you can get a pretty good power supply for like $40, $50. The things that I think most people look at buying used is the CPU and the GPU. For the CPU, I think it is a great idea to buy a used CPU. The reason for that is there's a CPU called the Intel Core i5-2500K. I've talked about it quite a bit in my previous videos. That CPU released back in like 2011, and still to this day, it is a beast of a CPU. But it's also a CPU that has a ton of listings on eBay. If you want to buy a used i5-2500K, a CPU that's still very, very good, you're only going to be paying around $110 to $120 for that used CPU, and that is a ridiculously good price. Comparatively to even the newest i5s, the i5-2500K still holds its own. It's almost as good as even the most recent i5s. And the fact that you can buy a used one for $120, that's going to let you save a lot of money on the CPU and still get a damn good CPU. Now, the one issue about buying an older generation CPU is that the i5-2500K is on the LJ1155 socket, so just make sure you're also getting a motherboard that's compatible with that CPU. There's not a lot of places that sell LJ1155 motherboards brand new, so you might have to go and get the motherboard used if you decide to get the CPU used as well. So that is a bit of a nuisance. If you do get a used CPU like the i5-2500K, you will probably end up getting a used motherboard as well. And just to let you guys know, if you do want to get something like an Intel Core i5-4690K used, that still goes for around $195, and at that price, I really don't think it's worth it to buy it used. An i5-4690K brand new is only $220 to $230, so to only save $30 to $35 really isn't worth it to buy a used i5-4690K. But with a CPU like the i5-2500K, that's a CPU they don't even sell new anymore. To get a CPU like that for $120 is a really good deal. And the other thing I want to talk about is buying a used graphics card. This follows the same route as the CPU in that if you want to buy a newer GPU used, let's say if you want to buy a GTX 970 used, you're really not going to be saving that much money. You might be able to find one for $270 used, and that's really not that good of a deal, considering you can pick up GTX 970s new for like $300 and get a free copy of The Division. Once again, if you're buying used graphics cards, the better idea is to look at older generation GPUs. Look at GPUs that are a few years old, like the GTX 670. You can find listings on those for around $150 on eBay. And the GTX 670 still holds up today. I have a buddy that has the GTX 670 and he still plays all the newest games. Not maxed out, of course, but as a $150 GPU, I think you guys are going to be very happy with it if you were to buy a used 670. Same thing goes for AMD GPUs. Look at stuff like the 7950. Older video cards that a lot of people are really trying to get rid of because they do want to upgrade to the newer generation GPUs. Nobody's really trying to get rid of their GTX 970, or if they are, they're looking to get rid of it at a premium price, so it doesn't make sense to go and buy a GTX 970 used because the value on that is still really high even as a used product. So definitely when you're buying a used video card, look back at previous generations, educate yourself on how these video cards perform, because the performance of video cards that are this old aren't as readily available as performance of, say, an R9 390 or a GTX 970 or any of the newer video cards. But I'm sure if you go on YouTube and you type in like The Witcher 3 GTX 670 or Fallout 4 GTX 670, you're still going to be able to find gameplay, figure out how those GPUs perform, and then if they are to your liking, go over on eBay, check out the prices, and you can get some really great deals if you do look for older generation GPUs, because like I said, people really do try to get rid of those. And that's really the two main things that most people are going to buy used, because because things like RAM, things like the case, those are already available for so cheap. You can pick up a case like the NZXT Source 210 for like $35, 8GB of RAM is like $30. There's really no point in getting components like that used because they are so cheap. But to get an Intel Core i5 2500K for $120 or a GTX 670 for $150 and turn that into a gaming PC, you can end up getting a real bang for your buck. So that's gonna wrap up this video. If you guys like this video, give it a like. If you disliked, obviously hit that dislike button. And if you have a request for a future video, leave it in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.